We're going to talk about Deontay Wilder, Tyson Fury undercard. We're also going to talk about some other things in boxing, the fights that are upcoming, etc. Right? So let's start off with Julian Williams, and he faced was it Vladimir Hernandez? I believe it was. Vladimir Hernandez had faced and beaten Alfredo Angulo, El Perro, upsetting him, and so this guy's not and on short notice as well, and he's a southpaw fighter, and he has a difficult style in the sense that he can counter a bit. He's tough, and he can go the distance. And Julian was really doing a great job with him in the early rounds. And as with most Mexican fighters, they catch up in the later rounds. You look at Castillo, they put the heat on you later on. So Hernandez sort of started, slow, and then he picked up the pace as the fight went on. And as a result of that, Hernandez actually pulled off an upset win over Julian Williams. And so shout out to each and every one of you guys out there. By the way, I'm what you need. You're watching my channel. We're talking some boxing. And we're going to talk about, what happened there. It was a little bit disappointing for Julian Williams, but you could see that his gas was running out of his tank. And even though he invested to the body heavily, it didn't really pay the dividends that he expected because Vladimir Hernandez, had that durability. He really had that durability. And it's an orthodox versus southpaw, so it's a little tricky in that, the different angles and stuff. But ultimately, in the end, Carlos Hernandez did win the fight, in my opinion, and I think that he did enough. He got Julian in trouble a couple times in the later rounds. You could see Julian was gassed, and so he lost his comeback fight. Now, once again, I'm going to say this. Guys lose fights, okay? You don't write off Julian Williams because he loses a fight, And Carlos Hernandez has proven to be a guy that upsets other guys. So you can't just look at it on the surface. And this is the problem I have with boxing. Straight Fighter, what's up, my brother? Straight Fighter in the building. You can't just look at boxers and say, well, this guy beat this guy. This guy, he's not good. Or Julian Williams is not good. He should have beaten. No, because you have to look at the motivation of a fighter. You have to look at what has the fighter done. And what kind of streak is he on? Julian Williams was out of the game for a minute, came back in the game, got back with his trainer, Stephen Edwards, and then started to have this fight. So you have to look at that and put things in perspective. Shout out to Straight Fighter, okay? Shout out to Straight Fighter. So Julian came up short in the fight. You could tell that he didn't quite have enough gas in the tank. I think he probably thought he could get this guy out of there sooner, and it turned out to be a much more durable guy. And so Julian came up short in that fight. But I must say that Julian's a hell of a fighter, and hopefully we see him back in the ring soon, because the more he gets into the ring, the more he has more fights, is the more he can get that feel and that flow and that tempo, that pace, and get back his conditioning that he needs to go a long 12 rounds, grueling 12 rounds with an opponent. And in this case, it was a grueling 12 rounds, and he just didn't have enough in the tank. Straight Fighter says, best fight out of the three. Best fight out of the three. What are you talking exactly about, Straight Fighter? Best fight out of the three. What are you talking about? Are you talking about Wilder versus Fury, the fight itself? We're talking about the undercard, but if you want to talk anything about the fight itself, feel free to do so. Definitely was the best out of the three. It showed both guys were not willing to back down. Both guys were willing to fight. I told you guys I thought Wilder was ready for this fight. He proved to be. There's a lot of things he still came up short with, and he's lacking, that really would come in handy. And Mark Breland was sort of actually Wilder versus Fury. All right. Mark Breland, after he saw the fight, he said, great fight. And Mark Breland was on his bicycle boxing off the back foot. And basically Mark Breland was saying this was what Wilder needed. In fact, if you go to Master Boxing, that YouTube channel, Coach Eric Bradley actually said the very same thing. Wilder needs to be able to fight off the back foot against a taller opponent. See, he can fight off the back foot, but he has always been fighting shorter guys. I think Vladimir Klitschko, Tyson Fury fought off the back foot against Vladimir Klitschko. If Tyson Fury pressed the action against Vladimir Klitschko, he probably would have gotten Vladimir out of there. And now he knows how to fight off the front foot. So what Wilder was doing, which was working very effectively for him, was he was actually pushing Tyson Fury back by attacking his body, using long jabs, long right hands, and stabbing him to the body. And he was really doing a good job, which is why in the fourth round he was able to drop Tyson Fury. Now, even when he got dropped in the third, he still stuck to using the jab to the body and attacking the body. He was using right hands to the body, jabs to the body. Anytime he had a chance, he went to the body. After he dropped Tyson Fury, I'm going to say this again, Deontay Wilder dropped Tyson Fury. He abandoned going to the... He was still throwing, a shot here or there in it. And Tyson Fury was working his jab. Tyson Fury wasn't working his jab to the body, even though he mixed it up a little bit. He was mostly working it to Deontay's head. He was hitting Deontay in his head because Deontay continuously snapped back. And that might work for shorter fighters. But you can't snap back against a taller fighter who has a longer reach than you. And we saw that with Josecito Lopez versus Keith Thurman. I keep on repeating. The only difference is Keith Thurman made the adjustment. What do you do when a fighter is throwing a long, hard jab and has reach that you have not anticipated? You need to dip under the shot. Either dip under the shot and lock up, or dip under the shot and counter or slip the shot. So when Tyson Fury throws his jab, a nice strong jab at Deontay Wilder should have slipped the shot, right? And if Tyson Fury were to throw the right hand behind that, which he did, then you have to slip it the other way, all right? And then you come back with a counter to his body or to his head. And Wilder just could not time those shots to slip them. So he just snapped back. He went back into, once he got hit, he went back into his old ways somewhat. He was just looking to tee off with the right hand and so on. But he was doing an excellent job for the first 3 rounds before he got dropped. And in the 4th round, he, was able to counter Tyson Fury and knock him down twice, which was really quite interesting, and the round ran out of time after that because it was to the end of round 4 and he was taking some punishment. But once again, the key here is Wilder needed to learn how to dip and cover up everything. A la Thomas the Hitman Hearns at 168. A la Sugar Ray Robinson in his fights against his opponents. Okay? I'm thinking of another guy who closes up something like that. Alright? But that's very important. As a defensive fighter, you must cover up everything. So I just hope he never used the shotgun jab. Like I said, the shotgun jab would have been very good to freeze Tyson Fury. It looks like you're going to stab to the pit, but instead you come up top and you stab the guy's chest or head. And a shotgun jab is a very, very important weapon. It is something you need to learn how to use in your arsenal. But once again, Deontay Wilder did a great job of keeping Tyson Fury on the back foot, which is what everybody was saying he needed to do, because he didn't know how to fight him when he's on the back foot and Tyson Fury is on the front foot. And the other thing is the jab was helping him to keep distance from Tyson Fury. He was keeping a certain distance from him so Tyson Fury can come in, clinch him, put his weight down on him, work on the inside with those uppercuts. Beautiful uppercuts on the inside with Tyson Fury. Deontay Wilder also, Tyson Fury with some uppercuts, but again, just looking for the position, that weight, the strength of Tyson Fury. You really want to kind of keep that to a minimum. He did step around Tyson Fury once or twice, getting underneath the right hand and rolling out. He still got caught with a shot. But that's what Wilder needed to do. He needed to roll under shots, slip shots. He needed to dip from shots and cover up his entire body. That way Tyson Fury can't really land shots on him that he wanted to land. And that was some of the things that Wilder didn't do. However, he did do something smart. When Tyson put his weight down on him, he would just give way and allow himself to go to the ground. But every time you have to get back off the ground, it kind of takes some energy from you as well. So, but by and large, Deontay Wilder in that fight, he held his own. He did much better than the second fight, and even better than the third fight, because in the third fight, at the end of the third fight, when he had knocked down Tyson Fury in the 12th round, Tyson Fury came at him, and Tyson Fury started walking him down, and that's when Wilder was defenseless. Once you got him on the back foot as a bigger fighter than him, much taller and everything, you really can. It's not any fighter can do this. Tyson Fury is 6'9", with a 80-something, 86-inch reach. Okay, so if Tyson Fury decided to walk to Vladimir Klitschko, he would walk him down, because he just stay behind his jab and walk him down. Same thing with Wilder. He could stay behind his jab and walk Wilder down. The key is Wilder would have to counter him by slipping under the jab and popping his jab to be able to counter Tyson Fury. And once he was to counter, because the whole point behind it was to counter him. And if you could counter Tyson Fury, or roll in under him, to roll in is not a good idea unless you're going to roll in and pivot off to the side to catch him with a hook or something. But, rolling in would just, he would put his weight down on you. I remember Vladimir Klitschko used to do those things to other shorter opponents. And then Tyson Fury started doing it to Vladimir Klitschko. So all I'm saying is that Tyson Fury is a big heavyweight. And when you're fighting those kinds of guys, you need to attack their body. You need to break down their body. Let's get back to what I was talking about. So Julian Williams, also known as J-Rock, J-Rock did pretty well against Vladimir Hernandez, but unfortunately for him, he came up short. He was able to make it to the final bell, so that was good. I've seen him in a couple fights where he kind of wanes, and that's what gets him knocked out. Against Jason Rosario, the same thing happened. When he came into the fight, he was fighting, and then he just lost strength and energy, and he was being beat up really bad. So I don't know if it is that J-Rock is content now that he's been unified world champion, he doesn't have the hunger anymore. I don't know if it's that, or if it's that just his conditioning. His conditioning wasn't quite the conditioning needed to win that fight. But once he fights a little bit more regularly, one or two workout with him and his trainer, and sometimes you start off on a shaky footing. That's okay, because Bernard Hopkins started off with a first loss. Henry Armstrong started off getting knocked out in his first fight. So these things happen. If not everything's not clicking in the right way, guys end up losing fights. So it happens. That's why there's when we talk about undefeated fighters and people saying anybody could be undefeated, it's not as easy as it sounds. You have to be on point every single fight, more than your opponent at some point. Okay, it's very, very difficult to do. So when I hear people talk about there's many undefeated fighters out there's not many. In the history of boxing, in terms of undefeated champions, there are only 15 or 16 of them. And of those 15 or 16, none have had a perfect boxing record greater than Floyd Mayweather. He is the only undefeated fighter, as a champion that is, who has had that kind of record. So he's the only one to do that. No one else has done it. And people talk about undefeated streaks. That doesn't mean anything. Undefeated streaks. Did a person retire undefeated? That's what I want to know. Did a person retire undefeated? So it's very difficult to go through an entire career, span of a career, and then retire undefeated. Far less to have the career that Mayweather had with the quality of opposition he had and retire. It's very difficult. That's why you hear me talk about Floyd Mayweather so much. It's not that I worship him, it's the things that he did in his career. I want you guys to know and understand, and whether you're a knockout puncher or not, and then but the quality of opposition, you must have that as well. Tank versus Rolly Romero is a mismatch fight. As far as I'm concerned, it's a mismatch fight. I don't need to see that. Tank has not been a real world champion in any weight class other than super featherweight. These are things that I don't I don't approve of. You know, once you become world champion, I expect you to have stiffer fights. And he's been world champion very early in his career, but the thing that brings people, you know, people to the table to see Tank, and Tank is a lot more skilled than the fights he's having, is these knockouts. But would Tank knock out Teofimo Lopez? Would Tank knock out Devin Haney? Would Tank even knock out Ryan Garcia? See? So my point is, they're trying to make him look good, but in the process of doing so, they're carrying him along very slowly. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, because the next fight I want to talk about is Edgar Berlanga versus the Argentinian boxer. In Argentina, you know, there's a great wealth and plethora of skilled, very great Argentinian boxers, right? We could talk about currently fighting still to this day, the southpaw Sergio Martinez. We can talk about Lucas Matisse, and they always have some kind of power, some of them. You can talk about the great Carlos Monzon. We can talk about Carlos Baldemir. We can talk about Marcos Maidana. I mean, there's a wealth. Argentinian boxing, there's a wealth of great fighters from Argentina. And I only spoke about some of them. And so this fighter that faced Edgar Berlanga has a lot of experience. He had actually faced Billy Joe Saunders and gave him a run for his money. I think Billy Joe Saunders stopped him in the 11th round, if I'm not mistaken. This guy, I think this was Billy Joe Saunders' debut in the United States of America. This guy's tricky, you know, he does his homework and very much rolls punches, rides punches, he moves with punches. So Edgar couldn't really get off his power like he wanted to. He had a nice, sharp jab, but it was a jab that was coming at a certain speed, a constant speed all the time. So the Argentinian fighter was able to time that, he was able to counter it. And in the 11th round, I believe it was, or 10th, I can't remember, or 9th, he was able to catch Edgar Berlanga with a right hook. And the reason he was able to catch him was because it was sort of like an overhand right hook, but he dipped down. So he rolled with Edgar Berlanga's left hook and dipped down and threw the overhand right hook. And the point behind that is, and I keep on saying, it's like a defensive maneuver to ride punches and also to roll punches. As you are using your defensive maneuver, with that defensive maneuver comes the offensive maneuver. And that is what a counterpuncher can do. You see, it's all about defense. And from that defense comes offense. With the lead hand, if you're a southpaw, in this case he was not a southpaw, he was an orthodox fighter, but he's throwing his power hand, but he's riding the punch with his head. So Edgar comes with the hook right here. He's riding the hook as he's coming with a hook of his own. And notice he dips down with his head. Again, I cannot emphasize enough that in boxing, to protect yourself, to protect your upper body, you need to change levels, which means you have to dip down low and cover up your body. In the process of doing that, you can actually have offense with that. So if I'm dipping down low, I can do like this and come to you with a left hook as I'm dipping down, which is basically what the Argentinian boxer did, and catch you with he did it with the right hook though. He was dipping to his right. So as he dips, he comes with the right hook. If you're going to trade hooks with people, if you're going to trade a hook with a guy to the head, dip down so it comes as an overhand right or overhand right hook. That way you can catch a guy. Look at Canelo Alvarez versus James Kirkland. See the same thing he did? He dipped under, he dipped this way, and came with his right hook, knocked out James Kirkland as he was coming with his hook, and rolled under the punch and back up. In other words, the key in boxing with defense, as strange as it sounds, is to get low. Get low. I tell you that. It's about bending your knees. It's about bending your back. It's about bending at the waist, sorry. Those are things you have to do if you really want to be good at boxing and you really want to win in fights. That way, if you're trading hooks with a guy, you're going to come out okay. He might get caught with a hook. And a lot of boxers, especially on their back foot, they prefer to hold the phone and snap back like a la Muhammad Ali. Don't do that. You're going to get caught. What you got to do is you're going to swivel back and under. You got to be on the swivel. Swivel back and under, or you swivel under the shot, and you can come with your counter at the same time. And you will see guys drop, change levels, and throw their hooks. And they both miss each other. But that's the thing you need to do. Now, of course, you know, Edgar Berlanga, he got caught. He was very, very disappointed that he got caught with that shot, because he came with the left hook and then he came in with the right hand. He walked right into the hook, you know. So he threw a left hook and then he threw a right hand. And he knew he shouldn't have closed the distance. He knew he should have stayed at a certain range. And he got caught pretty bad with that hook. And it seized him up for a minute, fell back, and it was like, man. So it was a mistake on his part. Nonetheless, the Argentinian boxer buzzed him a couple of times in that fight. Very cagey, very crafty, veteran of the sport, and experience did show. Now, he didn't win the fight. Edgar Berlanga won the fight. Edgar Berlanga dictated most of the rounds. But he did drop Edgar Berlanga, so the fight was a little closer than the scorecards gave credit. But Edgar Berlanga pretty much won most of the rounds of the fight, so he still made it through that fight. There was no robbery or anything. I know people online talking about robbery, but it wasn't. Let's talk about the other fight. Frank Sanchez versus Efe Ajagba. Now, in that fight was very interesting because Efe Ajagba is long, he's rangy, you know, he's setting up the right hand, he's using his jab. He wasn't using his jab too much in the fight, though. And that was because Frank Sanchez kept on staying just outside range, and instead of Efe Ajagba throwing his jab, which he would know he would miss, he was worried about the counters that Frank Sanchez would come back at him with. Very sharp counters Frank Sanchez had. Cuban School of Boxing, and you saw it on display. Reynoso really perfecting what Sanchez does, you know, his sparring sessions with Canelo that helped him to be super sharp. Now, Sanchez is not the biggest heavyweight. He's not one of those super heavyweights. It's not like the two giants, the two Goliaths clashing with each other that we saw on the screen with the main event. All right. But having said that, I must say that it was still a good fight, and I was pretty impressed. Is today Tuesday? Today's Tuesday. Today's Tuesday. Okay. Yeah. I was still pretty much impressed with the performance of Frank Sanchez, even though is shorter. He was able to neutralize a lot of things, make Efe Ajagba guess and second guess what he needed to do. He dropped Efe Ajagba in the, I can't remember which round. Efe Ajagba actually dropped him as well, but it wasn't counted. But he did drop him. But he dropped Efe Ajagba, and he pretty much won every single round of the fight. Okay. What can I say about that fight? Simply that, again, it's not so much about power. I'm sure Efe Ajagba was the harder puncher of the two, but obviously Frank Sanchez wasn't giving him the opportunity to land the punch. Frank would stay on the outside and come to the inside, slip punches, counter Efe Ajagba. So anytime Efe Ajagba tried to throw anything, Frank would counter him. And it was a fight which had a lot of quiet pieces, and then it would just be this explosiveness in between. And Frank is very explosive. And he was able to walk down Efe Ajagba coming down to the end of the fight. But it was one of those fights where Frank dictated, he controlled the fight, pretty much. You know. Very sharp counterpunch, by the way. Now, the co-main event was Robert Elenius versus Adam Kawanaki. And Adam Kawanaki has to work on his defense. Robert Elenius was popping him with the jab at will. He was just catching him with the jab at will. Robert Kawanaki throws a lot of combinations and stuff, but that really didn't matter in this fight because, one, he couldn't close the distance of Robert Elenius. Kept on catching him with right uppercuts and straight rights and jabs. I believe he put him down, actually. He knocked him down in the fight. And he was beating up really bad. And the only thing that Adam Kawanaki had working for him was he was hitting him with trying to hit him with body shots, but he kept continuously hitting him low. So at one point, Robert Elenius fell on the ground because he'd been punched low. And eventually the fight was DQ'd because Adam Kawanaki, even though he was taking a lot of punishments, both eyes almost closed, hit Robert Elenius with a low blow, and the referee said enough is enough and called the fight off. So that's how that fight ended. But Adam Kawanaki needs to work on his defense. His defense is not, he's a punching bag. And Robert Elenius, did an excellent job against him. But it's like the counterpuncher's dream. The guy's coming to you, you don't have to look for him or anything. You just have to land your jab and right hand. And he was just continuously doing that and breaking down Adam Kawanaki. And he was landing some uppercuts to the body as well, which was really good for Robert Elenius. But mostly using the right hand, the 1-2 most of the time. You check with him every occasionally. So that was that event. Now let's talk about the main event. Wilder versus Tyson Fury. I already talked enough about that. I don't think I could go deeper. Now I'm hearing some people talk about slow count and all of these nonsense. Listen, whether the guy gets a slow count or not, Wilder put the guy down after the first slow count. The second, he put him down. And he was going to hurt him, but just the round ran out of time. So essentially what I'm saying is, it doesn't matter if the referee does a slow count, a long count, a fast count. It doesn't matter. What is important is you put the guy away. And Wilder was on record of saying that if he knocks this guy down, he's not getting back up. Well, he got back up. And he continues to get back up and he was hurt in round 5. Wilder was doing this thing in round 4 and then took over round 5. But Wilder just couldn't get him out of there. He just couldn't get him out of there. So that's on Wilder. And Fury was able to drop Wilder 2 more times. He dropped him in the 11th. So Wilder took a lot of punishment from Fury, a lot of jabs. The jab really changed the fight. And the thing about it, Fury was jabbing mostly Wilder's head. It wasn't really his body, which was very interesting to me. But, Wilder wasn't doing much of anything. He was still catching him with rights and lefts and stuff like that. And buzzing Tyson Fury. It was the back and forth, but he had abandoned his jab, and his jab, and his straight right hand to the body. That's what you got to do with a guy like Tyson Fury. You got to break down the body, and we knew that was part of their game plan, but it was left behind, and it really, Wilder just needs to invest in the body a little bit more in his future fights. I don't care who he's facing. It was Andy Ruiz or whoever. But he has to invest in the body more. I think that's what was lacking in this fight. And I think that's what equalized the thing to set up the knockdown that he got with Tyson Fury, because he was going to Tyson Fury's body with some nice piercing shots. Now, some people say, Wilder was getting fatigued because he was excited or whatever. Listen, ultimately, at the end of the day, you got to do what you got to do. And one of the things Wilder didn't do was just go to the body. I don't care if you touch him to the body. I don't care what you do. Just keep on going to the body. And he didn't do that. He did it for, I think, the first four rounds. But by the 5th and 6th, he was just trying to tee off. He'd go back, try to go to the body, but most times he was just trying to tee off with the right hand. And you can't do that. Tee off to his body with the right hand. The body is something you don't have to go to his head. And his problem was he was susceptible to those jabs. Tyson Fury was just catching him with the jab. He couldn't miss the jab. And that was breaking down Wilder. So it is what it is, but ultimately in the end, it was a great fight. I think Wilder needs some more defensive He needs to work on his defense a little bit more, implement some more of the things that he was doing with Malik Scott, continue doing those things. And we'll see how he turns out as a fighter. He's got, a decent amount of heavyweights he hasn't faced before. So we'll see if he gets that opportunity to face those heavyweights, and we'll see what happens with respect to his career as it continues on, which we know he's going to continue his career. With Tyson Fury, he's either facing the winner of Dillian White, Otto Wallen, or he's facing the winner of Alexander Usyk, Anthony Joshua, or he's facing Alexander Usyk now, seeing that Alexander Usyk has to remain in the belts. We'll see what happens and what transpires. The WBC mandated it. So we'll see. I mean, anything's possible in boxing. I know that Anthony Joshua is owed a rematch with Alexander Usyk, but the question is, will Alexander Usyk be champion at the time if he were to face Tyson Fury and the aftermath of that? So that's the question. But we will see. I mean, I am what you need. You're watching my channel. If you like this video, don't forget you can like, share, subscribe, and donate via Western Union or MoneyGram. I'm going to catch you guys later. Those are the fights. Now, there's some more stuff I want to talk to you guys about. One of them was, the upcoming fight, Crawford versus Sean Porter. And Sean Porter in the Porterweight podcast was talking about that. And one of the things Sean Porter said was that Max Kellerman. Max Kellerman says that Sean Porter is one of his favorite fighters. The thing with Sean Porter is he has to be able to have that finishing touch. He has to have that clarity-defining win. Obviously, Terence Crawford is motivated for this fight, and he's very excited to showcase his skills for this fight. And Sean Porter obviously wanted this fight, so he's happy that he got it. Now the question is, Terence Crawford just needs to be Terence Crawford. The question is, can Sean Porter do a little bit more to make the fight a clear fight for himself? They need to have a game plan to be able to bring that to fruition. So hopefully they have that game plan, and we'll see what happens with that fight. It's nothing much more. I saw Canelo get interviewed on the Last Stand podcast. It was pretty good. And Canelo was talking about the fact that he believes that early on he'll have to figure out what Caleb Plant brings to the table. And then after that, he is going to try and break him down, get him out of there. And so he says the fight's probably going to go something like Billy Joe Saunders' fight. The difference is I think Caleb Plant's going to start very strong, unlike the Billy Joe Saunders fight. And Canelo is going to be looking to go to Caleb Plant's body, in which case Caleb Plant would be sensible to keep his body away from getting punched by Canelo, use ankles on him, and go to Canelo's body instead, which is what Caleb Plant actually did in the press conference. He landed a right to Canelo's chest. So if Caleb Plant does that, I think he could win the fight. But we'll see. I mean, Canelo's looking at down the road, probably. It depends on what's presented to him. And he says it could be something like the Billy Joe Saunders fight, even though Billy Joe Saunders is southpaw. So we will see. I've seen what Caleb Plant can do in the ring in professional pro boxing fights, but we have to see what he can do also in this particular fight, which is one he's never faced an opponent like Canelo before. So this should be interesting. Well, I'm what you need. I'm gonna get out of here. Before I do so, let me leave you guys with a passage of scripture which goes something like this. Go ye therefore, teach all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Ghost. Everybody feels that's the Trinity or something that's being spoken of. It's not necessarily, but the most important part in the whole thing is to be able to share with people and demonstrate to people the way of love. Sometimes teaching somebody is just simply by setting the example and showing people. So that's what I gotta say. What you need in the building. I'm gonna catch you guys later. Peace.